And then the doctor came in and said, I hate to tell you this, but your daughter has a fatal condition. It will take her life. She lived for 10.5 hours before she passed away. She reached up and grabbed Steph's finger and just squeezed. I had a dream that night where I was Grace looking up at me and Steph and just filled with the most beautiful feeling of love that I've ever felt. I started doing some research. I found out what health insurance was paying for. I realized that 200,000 families every year go bankrupt due to a medical event, even though they have health insurance.
Wow, 200,000 families every year go bankrupt.
And so I always tell people, if you don't have enough money in your bank account to cover your deductible, you don't actually have health insurance. You think you do, but you don't. There's gotta be a different way of doing this. And so I quit health insurance and became uninsured. Can we do something different here where people aren't gonna go bankrupt? And so I think you've got to step outside of this health insurance racket and get into an alternative so you don't pay for some of these things that you and your conscience don't really want to be paying for.
Andy Schoonover, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. So you just flew in this morning.
I did.
Where from?
Austin, early 6 a.m. flight out.
Excellent.
Taking the 7 o'clock flight back. So back in a day, there and back in a day.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited to have you on. Live Action actually did a feature. Well, you did a feature that we got to post, which tens of millions of people watched, about you and your wife, Steph, and your daughter. Can't wait for the podcast to hear about that because it's an incredible and beautiful story and has a lot of implications, I think, that the show would care about healthcare and caring for babies. And you're also an interesting guy because you're an entrepreneur. And we have a little bit in common because you spent some time in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Interesting place to spend time. Yeah, I was out there for a couple of years at Stanford at business school. This was 2004 to 2006, which was a kind of a crazy time because the tech boom was alive and well. I think I saw Steve Jobs walking up University Avenue 3 or 4 times.
Turtleneck?
Yeah, turtleneck, black turtleneck, of course.
It must have been hot. It gets hot up there.
It does. It does. But, you know, Stanford is a wild place to go to school. It is not the friendliest to believers. And I saw that firsthand. And in fact, I wrote a pro-life article my first year of business school. And, you know, I was blacklisted probably from the dating scene thereafter. So it was a wild experience being out there for a couple of years.
So you wrote a pro-life article well at Stanford Business School,
Yeah.
defending the pro-life position. Where was that posted?
Yeah, it was in the Stanford Business School newspaper.
Nice.
And so actually the editor reached out to the entire school and said, we're doing this debate. I'm pro-choice. I'd like somebody who's pro-life to debate me in the newspaper. And I was compelled to do that. And so took that on. And I think it was 10,000 word, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 pages, something like that in the newspaper. So it was a full, you know, everything from, you know, Roe v. Wade to the current day of, you know, what's going on in the pro-life movement and why I think that, you know, people should be pro-life. So it was pretty intense.
Thanks for the courage in doing that.
Yeah.
We need more of that. And then you were sharing before the show, you were owning or renting a house that Mark Zuckerberg ended up starting Facebook out of.
Yeah.
We got to just hear that story.
It's so funny. So there's a movie called The Social Network, and through that there's a subplot where Eduardo, who is Mark Zuckerberg's co-founder, had to go to his dad to get, I forget, it was $16,000 or $18,000 to pay for this house because they were moving their company from Boston to Silicon Valley. Well, the house that they moved to was my house during the summer between my first year and second year of business school. My roommates, we all went all over the country doing our internships for that summer, and Zuckerberg stayed there. We always kind of joke that it was probably our worst financial decision ever, because if we had taken that $16,000 or $18,000 in Facebook equity, it would be worth something like $100 million today. So you live and learn, I guess.
Did he keep the house clean?
You know what? He didn't.
Oh, man.
You know, we came back the next
I'm
summer.
actually not surprised
and
by
there was
that.
business,
Bunch of tech bros.
business plans from Facebook. And again, this was 2000
in the house.
In the house,
Just strewn about.
strewn about. And so, yeah, I should have kept those because they were pretty interesting. Yeah. He had a receipt to the Ritz-Carlton in New York that said Mark Zuckerberg on it. And so I took it to class.
Sell it on eBay.
Yeah, I should have sold
Andy.
it to eBay. I took it to class, and the guy, one of my guys in class, was the first investor in Facebook. He worked for the company that was the first investor, and he looked at me and he was kind of like, I was like, can you believe they're spending your money on the Ritz-Carlton? And he's like, it's going to be okay. You know, because you had to have it.
He believed in it.
He believed in it big time. And, you know, back then they had to have a .edu email address just to do Facebook.
That's
so
right.
we just
I
thought it
remember
was going to
those
be
days.
cool college thing to do, never knowing that it was going to be one of the largest companies on the planet.
So you had the entrepreneurial bug, obviously. You're at Stanford Business School. Tell me about the trajectory of going. You end up in Austin, but you kind of first found your wife, Steph, in another state. Tell me about that trajectory and then getting to Austin.
Yeah, I've always kind of marched to the beat of my own drum. And so all my Stanford Business School classmates were doing Google and Facebook and all these cool technology companies. I bought a little company in Dayton, Ohio, of all places. It was a medical alert system provider. So you've seen the commercial, I'm sure, of I've fallen and I can't get up. The old lady on the ground. Well, I bought a competitor to theirs and then grew that for about 10 years. And, you know, while I was there, I met my wife, Steph. And so, you know, while people ragged on me for going to Ohio, I rag on them and say, hey, look, I got a beautiful wife and a bunch of cute girls now. So it all worked out.
What was it that gave you your pro-life conviction?
You know, I think it was just growing up in a family that was a conviction of theirs. I mean, my mom has took me to, I actually grew up in Washington, D.C., and I went to those marches ever since I can remember. Probably, I think it was at one point, like 15 years in a row, we would go down to the mall and do that march. And you know, I remember the days where it was like 16 degrees because that march always happens in, I think, January, the third week of January. And I just remember doing it. So I just it was a part of the core growing up, and, you know, didn't know that it was going to be, you know, kind of a key component of our life, you know, 30 years later. But it ended up being that.
And how many brothers and sisters?
I'm one of 5.
One of 5. So a pro-life family just by nature.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So you meet Steph, you're in Ohio, you meet Steph. What drew you guys together?
You know, it's interesting. I had kind of left the church for a while, and I met a cute girl, and she was going to church. And so I was like, you know what? I'll go to church with you. And that's kind of how it happened. And I think that, you know, through that, I kind of fell in love with the Lord and kind of went from, you know, a rules-based approach to my faith to more of a heart-based approach to my faith. And, you know, that really captured me. And so I got baptized once when I was born, but again, when I was in my mid-30s, just because I wanted to own it for myself and not having it have my parents' decision. And, you know, best thing that I've ever done. So, you know, again, my faith has played such a huge role in my life, especially since, you know, my early to mid-30s. And yeah, I'm just so thankful for that day that I met Steph.
So tell me about, you were just sharing, you moved to Austin with Steph, you're starting a new life there, you get pregnant. Share with me about the circumstances of that pregnancy and your daughter.
Yeah. So we, you know, just moved to Austin, new place, new house, new church, new everything, no community really. And Steph got pregnant, like I said, right away. And then during our ultrasound, we see Grace there. She was gorgeous, beautiful, you know, 10 fingers, 10 toes. You know, she's squirming around. We actually have video, and I don't know why they allowed us to have video, because typically when you go into those, they don't let you take video, but I have the whole video of that. And I said something like, she's twirling around like a little ballerina. And then the person doing the ultrasound kind of stopped and said, hey, I have to leave. I'll be right back. We were just like, okay, this is our first time. We don't know. And then the doctor came in and said, you know, I hate to tell you this, but your daughter has a fatal condition. It's called anencephaly. It will take her life. And so, sorry, went from this joyous occasion to just being devastated. Yeah, devastated at that news, and thought it was just going to break us. And then they sent us to the perinatal doc, who said, hey, terminate and try again. No big deal. You can have another one. And I was like, wait, hold on a second. Like, we just saw her, you know, she's perfect in our eyes. And is there anything we can do? Nope, there's nothing you can do. So we thought we were going to lose her at some point during the pregnancy. And, and she made it. She made it. So she lived for 10 and a half hours before she passed away. So we got to hold her and really connect. Sorry.
What was it like when you first held Grace?
It was the most beautiful thing because we didn't know she was going to make it out alive. Because a lot of those babies, they come out stillborn. And she gave the most beautiful cry, and we have it on tape. And so it was just a sweet thing. And, and given her condition, there wasn't a ton of interaction. But she reached up and grabbed Steph's finger and just squeezed. And it was just, we knew. And so we hung out with her for 10 and a half hours. She ended up passing away. And, her spirit was gone, but her body was still there. So we hung out with her for a little longer. And then, the most difficult thing is handing her over to a nurse, knowing that you're not going to see her again. And so we did that, and we went home. Went home without a baby, which is the most difficult thing ever. And we went home in our neighborhood. Super sweet. It was pouring rain, and they put candles out on the street, and the candles were still lit. It was pouring rain, and the candles were still lit. I'm like, this is the strangest thing ever. And so we went home, and of course, at that moment is when the enemy really started hammering us. We started this conversation around, did we tell Grace that we loved her enough? We only had 10 and a half hours. And so it was like, did she know that we loved her? Which is just the dumbest question. But again, you're in the state of being where you just don't get it, right? You just are totally lost in those moments. And I had a dream that night where I was Grace looking up at me and Steph, and just filled with the most beautiful feeling of love that I've ever felt. I was like, I bet that's what heaven kind of feels like, And so I was like, okay, Lord, thank you, for that little, reminder that that you love us, we loved her, she loved us. It was really sweet. And then we had, sorry, I'm keep rambling on my story, but then we had this stupid pastor tell us that he doesn't know if babies actually go to heaven. So you have two grieving parents, and a pastor says something that ridiculous. And that was just the one thing we were holding on to, at least Grace is in heaven. And so Steph had a dream that night where it was a reflecting mirror, and she was on the non-reflective side and Grace was on the reflective side in a beautiful place, totally healed, and looked like a little Steph, So again, it was like the Lord's way of being like, I got her. So, and through that, I think, you either go one way or the other with your faith. You either say, okay, Lord, how can you possibly let this happen? Or you can go the other way, which is, I need you now more than ever. And through that, we had, we were newly married. We didn't know how to communicate during grief. There was very close points of time where we almost called it a day in our marriage. And so we've kind of got this renewed sense of being in marriage ministry and helping other couples. And so it's amazing the way that the Lord works through really difficult periods of time. And I appreciate the challenges in life now, and that the way that the Lord uses that to create perseverance, and so many verses around that. Rejoice in affliction, my power is made perfect in your weakness, which is just hits home for us because we did see his power through our weakness. So as a result of that, Steph was like, I want to do something about this because most of these babies are aborted. It's 95% plus. Because when we went to the perinatologist, they are trained to say, terminate and try again.
95% of babies with the anencephaly condition are aborted.
Yeah.
Did you, the fact that was the first advice you were given, terminate and try again, And that's not just you, that's so many couples every day in America. Their baby has some disability. Whether it's fatal or just a very significant disability, they're given that advice. How did that feel when you were told that? You had just seen your baby on ultrasound moving
honestly,
around?
it kind of went in one ear, out the other. We were so convicted about what ultimately we were going to do. And actually, Steph and I didn't even talk about it. We never even talked about, are we going to do this or not? Like, it was just of course, we're going to have this baby, right? Like, we kind of laugh at it to this day. Like, we never once had that conversation about whether or not, Steph was going to carry. So yeah, it didn't even, and it was only later that we kind of looked back and was like, do you remember that time when that perinatologist said, and she's like, oh yeah, she did tell us to do that, didn't we? Like, how do we change that conversation? Because it's a pretty crass, conversation with not a lot of options. And that's why, Steph started a nonprofit called Caring to Term, which is to change that conversation to say, hey, you may not be able to withhold the terminate and try again, but at least give them another option. Give them an option of saying, but if you want to carry, here's some resources. And I think doctors don't really have the resources to give people if they want to carry, because that's like what? Nobody carries. How do we even manage this? And so caringtoterm.org is an organization that Steph put together. And it's helping those doctors direct women to say, hey, there's another option here if you want to hear about it. So the thing I would say to people out there, if you have somebody, if you're dealing with this, or if somebody in your family is dealing with this, like, it is a really hard thing, but it's the most beautiful thing that we've ever experienced. And so we do not look back with any regrets. Every year on our birthday, we have 2 more girls since then. And, they remember their sister to the extent they can. We go to the hospital every year on Grace's birthday. We give the nurses, cookies and just say thank you for loving us well through that. And until the last couple of years, the nurse that actually helped with Grace, that we handed Grace to when, the last time we saw her, she was there. And so she remembers us. She's like, oh, you guys, the Schoonovers, you're back. You have cookies. So it was a sweet thing. And I think, hopefully we ministered to them through that opportunity to do that. So
in today's modern world, it can be very difficult to take the time and the space to pray, and even to know how to pray. That's why I love the Hallow app. The Hallow app is the #1 Christian app in the world. It's been downloaded over 15 million times, and it helps us deepen our relationship with God. When you use the Hallow app, you get access to over 10,000 guided prayers, meditations, stories, and other content to help you with your prayer. Whether you're driving in your car, or you're doing dishes, or you're just going about your day and you just need 5 to 10 minutes to sit down and focus on what matters most, your relationship with God, Hallow app will help you do that. With Hallow, you'll learn to pray with scripture using the Bible. You'll also discover prayers that have been prayed by Christians for thousands of years. I also love that Hallow takes some of the most beautiful and the best spiritual classics and incorporates them for you into your daily prayer life. Right now, there's a special challenge going on with Hallow to rediscover the Christian classic by C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. Mere Christianity was one of the key books for me that helped me in my journey and my walk with Jesus Christ. And what Hallow is doing is taking excerpts from Mere Christianity and doing guided prayer times after reading through the excerpts. There's all kinds of fun challenges on the Hallow app to help you improve your prayer life, and again, access to every kind of prayer that you can imagine. I especially love the kids content on Hallow. I use it with my kids, and they also have wonderful sleep prayers and sleep stories that you can use to help you wind down at the end of a long day. You can download Hallow for free for 3 months when you go to the link in the description, or go to hallow.com/Lila. That's hallow.com/Lila. Download Hallow today and deepen your prayer walk with God. There was a couple years ago, Dr. Phil, this was right after Roe v. Wade was overturned, wanted to do a feature on abortion, and he chose as sort of the protagonist of his feature for his show a woman who was carrying a baby with disabilities that might be terminal, and she was told she couldn't have an abortion. At this point, it would have been a late-term abortion, by the way. And so the whole slogan of the show was "Carry to Bury." So it was basically a whole show around why you need to do an abortion if the baby has a terminal illness. because otherwise you have to carry the baby, deliver a baby, and then deal with the death of your baby. What do you think about that? What was your response to that?
I think we as a society have gotten very good, and I use that in the most broadest terms, of getting rid of things that inconvenience us, right? Getting rid of things that are hard, and therefore we have been softened. You know, there's that slogan, I think, that says like, you know, great times produce soft men create bad times create good times, or something like that. But in essence, what it's saying is basically, if you try to eliminate all the hard things in your life, you become softened. And we are, as a society, have become that. And so I'm all about like, no, we need to do hard things. Like physiologically, if I go to the gym tomorrow morning, it's going to hurt. And because it hurts, I grow. And I think biblically it says that. I just gave you a quote on that. And so I think it's a tragedy to me that we dispense with all the hard stuff in life to try to live in comfort, but in essence, it actually makes life much, much harder by doing that. So I think it's a tragedy. That's the way that our society, our culture operates.
I think that's a really powerful observation, Andy, because it is true. I think we're afraid of suffering and having to sit with suffering and deal with suffering. Yeah. And I think there is, you know, the narrative as well, I'm actually eliminating suffering and it's helping people because I'm eliminating the suffering. Yeah. But that doesn't work when you're actually not just eliminating the suffering, you're eliminating the sufferer. Yeah. You're ending the life of a human being.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I say that through this journey, Steph did do some stuff on Instagram, and it wasn't to glorify herself, but more to say like, hey, there's another way of doing this. And we met so many people who we have one family actually not too far from here in LA who said, we had an appointment at Planned Parenthood and I saw what you're going through and I decided to cancel it. And we exchange Christmas cards with that family every year. And Amazing. That boy is the same age as what my daughter would have been.
He's alive.
And he's alive.
Wow.
And so we joke that 10 and a half hours of life that Grace had outside of Steph, obviously, was more impactful than my 45 years. Because we know that there are hundreds, maybe even thousands of babies that are alive as a result of her 10 and a half hours. And much thanks to, Live Action, you all put that up on Facebook and it went viral. And I think a lot of people, you read through those comments and people are like, oh my gosh, like I would have never even thought, to consider this. So it's a beautiful thing.
It's the power of your example, because it's one thing to talk theoretically about life is valuable, don't end a life, give the life care in any suffering that the life may have, but it's never right to take a life. We can make that case. And I think, it resonates with some people, of course, but when people are in the suffering, having an image, a story like yours to look to for encouragement, it's an incredible gift.
Thank you. It was a challenging couple of years, but we came out of it stronger than we went into it. So that's really important. And we have a daughter in heaven, which is great. Like I said, we have 2 more daughters. And so we're 1 for 3. So it's
amazing.
It's an amazing thing to kind of look back at and say, hey, when we go to heaven, then we get to see Grace again. And my daughters ask, I wonder what Grace is doing in heaven today. And I was like, not dealing with all the craziness down here, And so it's helped increase their faith too. We have a 6 and an 8-year-old. Grace would have been 9.5. And they are looking to their sister that they never met, but as an example of, how to live life, which is a cool thing that we get to talk about her all the time.
How did you pick the name Grace?
It was a name that, it comes back to faith. I mean, Grace is the most beautiful thing. And we had picked Grace before we knew that she had a condition. And so, it was just one of those things where it's like, man, Lord, like you work in mysterious ways that we chose the name Grace and you use Grace in such powerful ways, even through this story. So it was, and then our 2 girls have Grace as their middle names.
Oh, so beautiful.
They hold a little bit of their sister in their names.
Beautiful. So the whole experience you had of Grace's life, and then being with her in her death and sharing that story of the beauty of her life. I know it inspired you later on, not just your wife to start her nonprofit, Caring to Term, but also the business that you are leading right now. And I want to get into that because healthcare today in this country is increasingly chaotic. I think people are not happy with their healthcare, and so much of our healthcare is weaponized against the weak. And you experience that firsthand when you're told, oh, just terminate.
Yeah.
That's the message. And by the way, that's not just the message for families that have children with a disability that are unborn. That's the message if there's any kind of complication with pregnancy, just do away with the baby. Just end the life of the baby. The baby is like a commodity that can be tossed in the trash. It's not a sacred human life. And so healthcare just again and again goes to abortion. And then there's a lot of other things happening in our healthcare world that we were talking about before the show, like transgender reassignment surgeries for kids and hormone puberty blockers. And there's the whole world of, reproductive technologies. There's a lot that has happened in that world that is very damaging to human life. The frozen embryos, 1 million frozen embryos. So we could go on and on about all of that. But I know you see that, and you also have a lot of strong opinions about not just where healthcare is today, but how it needs to change.
Yeah.
So would love to hear you share what your journey has been like.
Yeah, sure. And, it's incredible how my girls have had such an impact on my life. I'm a girl dad. But, I not too long after Grace passed away, we had another girl, and then we had one more after that. And that one, the youngest, actually, this is just parental stuff, had recurring, ear infections. And so we took her to the ear, nose, and throat doctor, and he's like, she needs to get tubes in her ears. This is a pretty common thing. So we went and did that. And little did we know it was $8,000 for a 15-minute procedure. And I got that bill, and I was like, oh my goodness.
They didn't tell you beforehand?
No, they didn't tell us beforehand. We had my ear, nose, and throat doctor actually pre-authorized it with the health plan to say, are you sure this is okay? Yes, it's okay. So we went and did it. We got the $8,000 bill. We're like, okay, this is what health insurance is supposed to be for. Great. And we got another note a few weeks later that's from the health insurance plan that said, medically unnecessary, so we're not going to pay for it. I had to stroke an $8,000 check to the local hospital because my health insurance plan refused to pay for it. And that was what set me on this journey of really doing some research as to like, what is going on with health insurance? And, and some of the things we had talked about, like, what are they paying for? In some states, I think there's 6 or 7 states in the United States where they are forced to pay for abortions. Most health insurance plans are forced to pay for transgender reassignment surgeries and things like that. I was like, you know what? Between me not wanting, getting rejected for something my daughter clearly needed. She had a hole in her eardrum. Plus all this other garbage. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. There's got to be a different way of doing this. And so I quit health insurance and became uninsured.
Just because you were mad.
Because I was mad. Yeah, I was mad.
No backup plan yet.
No backup plan. I mean, a lot
You're just
of
like, if I'm going to be paying $8,000 out of pocket, I might as well just go it alone.
Just
anyways.
go it alone. I mean,
All right.
I was basically like, if you're not going to pay my bills, I'm not paying your bills, so I'm out. And if you quit in the middle of a year, you can't start again until the next year. And so
what year was this, Andy?
This was 2019. 2019.
So this is obviously during the Obamacare years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been, I don't know, what is that, the last over a decade now?
It was, I think 2010 or 2011 or something.
So when you were kind of doing this investigation of healthcare in 2019, when you went off of it, were you putting yourself in a state of being penalized? I know there's been a certain Obamacare mandate, as they call it, or the healthcare mandate, the federal one, is that if you're not enrolled, then you get penalized, is my understanding.
I believe at that time I was penalized 1 year.
Okay.
And then Trump came in and said that you no longer have to have a health insurance on the federal level.
Okay.
So I got rid of the penalty in my second year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. EveryLife.com is America's fastest growing baby diaper and wipes company. I love EveryLife because this is a premium product made from the best materials for your little one. and everylife.com is a pro-life company. In fact, when you join the Changing Lives Club at everylife.com, you will get 10% off your order, and you will also be able to donate 1 month's free supply to a mom or a baby in need so that they can get the diapers that they need. Did you know that some of the biggest diaper companies today, like Huggies and Pampers, are owned by conglomerates that are pro-abortion? That's why EveryLife is so important. Not only is the product better, I know from personal experience, than the Huggies and Pampers products, but the EveryLife diaper is also part of a mission to save lives. When you go to everylife.com/join, you can join the Changing Lives Club. This way you can set up a subscription to get your diapers and your wipes, these premium products, delivered right to your door for your little one. And after 3 months of the subscription, you will be able to donate for free a month's supply of diapers to a mom and a baby in need. So what are you waiting for? Go to everylife.com/join. Join the Changing Lives Club. Use the code Lila at checkout. Get 10% off your order, start your subscription, and after 3 months, you can donate a full month's supply of diapers to a mom and a baby in need. So tell me where Crowd Health, who we love on the show, we've talked about on the show, but this is the origin story. Yeah. You're off of healthcare now. Was that a little nerve-wracking for you or Steph?
More to my wife than to me.
She was like, what are we doing now?
More to my wife.
You're like, trust me, I'm going to do something really cool
I promise
in a minute.
we're going to figure it out. A lot of these entrepreneurial ideas come from just hardship again.
Yes, it's true.
And so I was like, we're going to figure this out. We're going to figure out some other way of doing this. And I started doing some research. I found out what health insurance was paying for. I realized that 200,000 families every year go bankrupt due to a medical event, even though they have health insurance.
Wow. 200,000 families every year go bankrupt due to a health event,
even with health insurance. Like the whole point of health insurance is that, if something big happens, you don't go into financial distress.
What are some examples of that?
So there's two primary reasons. One is medical claims are denied at a much higher rate than what you think. I, unfortunately, was one of those. So 1 out of every 6 medical claims are denied with Affordable Care Act plans. It's about the same with corporate health insurance too. And I was one. And so I, had been fortunate. I could pay the $8,000, but the vast majority of Americans, I think it's something like 72% of Americans don't have $5,000 in their bank account. That would put people into serious financial distress. And so I was like, that doesn't seem right to me. And then the other thing is they were getting into plans, people were getting into plans that have these huge deductibles. And so when I looked at it this year, I think it was this year, it was $1,400 a month for me and my family, and I think it was a $16,000 deductible. So I'm out over $30,000 before the health insurance plan pays a dime. And that most people in the United States can't afford this. And so I always tell people, if you don't have enough money in your bank account to cover your deductible, you don't actually have health insurance. You think you do, but you don't. You don't have enough money to actually use it because the health insurance plan is not paying until you pay your deductible. So that's a challenge for people. And those are the two primary reasons why people are going bankrupt due to healthcare expenses. And so I was like, can we do something different here where people aren't going to go bankrupt? And so, Crowd Health is like, you pay the first $500 of any health event, and then you can submit the rest to a community of people who've raised their hand to say, hey, I'll help out if Lila or Andy got hurt. And the cool thing about that is that I'm sending my money directly to Lila. And so let's just say you break your arm, and I say, hey, there's a woman in California, she broke her arm, she needs $5,000. Would you give her $100 to help her out with that? I'd ask 50 people, and at the end of that, you'd have $5,000 in your account so you can go and pay for your broken arm. The cool thing about this, though, is the fact that you're paying in cash, you're getting 50% better prices than United Healthcare or Blue Cross Blue Shield, because the doctors are so irritated with health insurance. They spend about a day a week fighting health insurance that they're like, please come. I'll give you a discount if you pay in cash, so I don't have to deal with the health insurance companies.
Can you kind of walk us through the differences in the model? Because Crowd Health is also not health insurance per se. Mm-hmm. It's a healthcare providing network, opportunities for healthcare provision, but that's a different model. So walk us through the differences in the model.
I just say it's a viable alternative to having health insurance. And, you get rid of many of the complexities of health insurance. So, I don't know about you, but my wife always asks when we changed health insurance with my job, well, is my, OBGYN in network, right? Or is my hospital that I want to go to in network or whatever it may be? The great thing with Crowd Health is there's no networks. You can go to whoever you want. And so you get rid of the complexity of in network or out of network. It is significantly cheaper than going to healthcare.gov, the Affordable Care Act plans.
What's the price difference look like?
Yeah, the Affordable Care Act plan for me and my family was $1,400 this year. I didn't buy it, but I just tested it to see what it would be. And for Crowd Health, it's $600. So I'm saving $800 a month. And
some healthcare plans will go up to be, for depending on the family and their needs, thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah, for sure. I was just with a member right before this, and he was paying $2,000 for his family, and he's now paying $600. On top of that, you're paying a big deductible, which, as I mentioned earlier, is another $10,000, $14,000, $16,000 you have to pay before the health insurance plan pays anything. For us, it's you pay the first $500, and then you can submit the rest of the community. So, God forbid something happens and you're going to the ER. The last thing you want to worry about is, how am I going to pay for this? You want to focus on your health. And so the great thing with Crowd Health is if you go to the ER, you got to put up the first $500 before the community will help you out after that. Everybody can come up with $500 somehow. It's not going to put you into bankruptcy to come up with $500. And I think that's really important, that we keep people financially viable while even if they have a medical event. So that's a big difference between us and health insurance. So cost is one, no networks, a really low commitment before the community will help out as opposed to big deductibles. Those are the biggies. And then I think one more is since you're paying the doctor yourself, the doctor now works for you. I always say that you work for whoever pays you. And right now, if you have health insurance, the insurance company is paying the doctor. Your doctor works for the insurance company. They're worried about the insurance company thinks, not necessarily you. If you pay the doctor, it changes completely. Now you have to answer to me because I'm the one paying. So if you're not paying for a product, then you are the product. And in our healthcare system, we are just cogs in a machine that unfortunately takes advantage of people who have health insurance. So it's a sad state of affairs.
Do you want to enjoy the most delicious cup of coffee that you've ever had in your life? Then you've got to check out 7weekscoffee.com. I love 7 Weeks Coffee because this is a company that sources their beans ethically from the top 1 to 2% of all coffee beans in the world. They also have direct relationships through fair trade with the coffee farmers so you can get the most high quality roasts. 7weekscoffee.com is also low acid, gourmet, small batch roasted coffee that is always fresh and is delivered right to your door. My favorite thing though about 7weekscoffee.com isn't just that it's the most delicious cup of coffee that you're going to drink, but that 7 Weeks Coffee donates 10% of all of their revenue, not just their profits, directly to pregnancy resource centers to help moms and babies in need. In fact, 7weekscoffee.com has given over $500,000 because of your purchases directly to help moms and babies in need through pregnancy resource centers. So go to 7weekscoffee.com today. You can use the code Lila at checkout, and you can get up to 25% off your first order by joining the Heartbeat Club. The Heartbeat Club is your special coffee subscription club that you get fresh coffee delivered right to your door. And by joining the club, you are donating to your pregnancy resource center of choice to help moms and babies in need. I recommend you check out the Ethiopian medium roast. That is my favorite. I've had friends tell me that the Hope roast is their favorite. There's all kinds that you can pick from: dark, medium, light. They've even got the decaf roast. Use the code Lila at checkout for up to 25% off your order. Drink the most delicious cup of coffee you've ever had and help save lives while you're doing it at 7weekscoffee.com. I'm going to guess a lot of people listening are like, this sounds great. We hate our healthcare provider anyways. But maybe there's a doubt in the back of their mind that maybe along the lines of, well, if I do this, what happens if there is catastrophic event, God forbid, and we go to the platform and it's maybe too big of a bill to fund. Maybe there's an ongoing fight with cancer. Mm-hmm. That could be years and years. Or there's some other event that requires a tremendous amount of upfront cash. What is your take on that?
Yeah, we've had a bunch of them already. So we've had colon cancer and breast cancer and cervical cancer and all kinds of different cancers that have been really big bills. We had a guy accidentally shoot himself, 6 holes in his body as a result, and it's probably going to be $1 million bill, and that one's going to get funded by the community,
fully funded by Crowd Health.
Yeah, I mean, I think
amazing.
Yeah, and so we've had big bills that we've dealt with.
How does that work? So if I have a big bill and I'm on the platform and putting it up, is there an email that goes out to all the members saying, help me out, or this is not funded yet? How does that work?
Yeah. So if you go to the ER and have an accident, you will get bills about a month later. You'll take those bills, you'll take a picture of it, you'll upload it to our app. We will consolidate all of those. We'll negotiate them. We actually have attorneys on our side who will negotiate them for you. We'll get that bill down, as low as we can get it. Then we'll come back to you and say, hey, we got that $1 million bill down to $200,000. Can we go now fund it? And you say yes. And then we'll go to a big chunk of the community and say, hey, will you fund this bill for Brian or whoever it was? And they'll say yes or no, and that money will come directly to Brian, and then Brian will then pay that directly to the hospital. And again, we're not in the middle of that money flow. We just ask on Brian's behalf, Lila and Andy and Harris and others to help him with that.
The average amount of generosity that a Crowd Health member is doing per year, what would you say that number roughly would be?
So
it probably varies, but
yeah. So they say yes 97% of the time. An individual is giving on average $115 a month.
That's it.
Yeah, for helping another person, it's we say it's a maximum of 135, but we only ask you for whatever we need this month. And so this in October, for example, we're only asking 115 of the 135 because we don't have enough bills to do the entire 135. So you get to keep the extra $20. That's
awesome.
And you get to do whatever you want with it. Whereas health insurance plans, by the way, they take that $20 and they pocket it. So we want you to keep that money. So because there's just not enough bills out there to pay.
That's awesome.
Over the 3 years that we've been around, we've only asked for the maximum twice. So we've only asked for that 135 twice.
Was that during COVID?
No, it was we had a bunch of NICU babies all at the same time. And they all made it out. So
they were all funded.
Good. They were all funded.
Amazing.
They were all good. And so
what
I think
an
we
amazing
had
thing.
4 or 5 NICU babies all hit at the same time. And so we popped it up to 135. And then we did that for 2 months in a row. And then it came back down. I think it came back down to like 120 or something like that. So it kind of goes up and down based upon just the bills that we have. But it's maxed out at 135. You won't pay more than that. We won't ask for more than that. Nor will we ask for the the $20 that we told you that you could keep. We're never going to come back and say, oh, remember that $20 that you got to keep? We want it now. We won't do that.
What is the ideal? Is there an ideal person to do Crowd Health? I mean, would you recommend it for your younger, healthier family? Or if you're an elderly person, you say, actually, this is really good for you. Do you have an ideal customer?
Yeah, so we'll go all the way up to 65. Once you hit Medicare, we can't do Medicare. So it is, yeah, I mean, it's really anybody who is tired of health insurance. If you're generally healthy, if you're expecting to have a baby in the next year or two, you can't be pregnant when you join and have that funded, just because we can't have people come in, get their baby funded, and then leave. So if you come, we have actually our number one expense, which I absolutely love, is babies. So 45%,
as it should be.
45% of our funding goes to babies. So we have a lot of people in the late 20s to kind of early 40s who are having babies. And so 45% goes to babies, about 25 or 30% goes to active injuries. So there's people out being active, something happens, they're on their mountain bike and they face plant something. And then the rest is a little illness and a little wellness. So it's really you're funding babies and active injuries, which I love funding. Like, happy
Can you
to do
use
that.
Crowd Health and an insurance company at the same
You can.
time?
Yeah, you can.
Do some people do that?
And some people, about 20% of our customers do that.
As an extra backup.
Most of the people, because I'm not really sure about this Crowd Health thing.
Let's try it out.
Let's try it out. Let's see how it works. But most of the people will ditch their health insurance plan after just a few months with Crowd Health.
Andy, what are your long-term goals for Crowd Health? And then also, what are your long-term goals with your family, you and Steph?
Yeah. So I'll go with Crowd Health first. I mean, look, I I don't want this just to be a little niche company that does something cool. I really think we have the opportunity to change the way that healthcare is paid for. And if we can do that, it's going to save people hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. You know, our healthcare costs $4.6 trillion every year.
Wow.
If it were a country, it'd be the fourth largest country on the planet after China, the United States, and Japan. And so that's how much we spend on healthcare. And I think it's bankrupting our country. And so I think we need to do a new way. And I don't want it to be run by the government because they have shown an inability to do that successfully. And I know I'm going to be paying for things I don't want to be paying for. So I hope it revolutionizes the way we pay for healthcare. That's my end goal. You know, and I for my family, I want my girls to love the Lord, and that's above anything else. I don't care what they do with their life, as long as they love Jesus. I don't care. My eldest is just a really cute story. She was trying out for a play at school, and I asked her before she got her part. I said, "Hey, what happens if you don't get the part that you want?" And she looked at me and she's like, "Well, I guess that's God's plan." And I'm like, "That's my girl. That's my girl." So I just want them to glorify God, you know, find what skill that God has given them and how they can glorify him with that skill.
It's beautiful. Thank you for the work you're doing. It's very exciting, and maybe we'll check back in a couple of years and you'll be from 10,000 to 1 million. I don't know.
Love that.
And do you have a goal that you're looking to reach? To get the platform to a certain number of users?
100,000 in the next couple of years is really the goal. And then, let's see how we can 1 million it from there. So 10X and a 10X, 100X is a pretty big goal, but we can do it.
Amazing. I believe you can do it. Where can people find Crowd Health, and where can people find Caring to Term?
Yeah, caringtoterm.org. It's a super cool organization my wife does. I can assure you an awesome job at stewarding it. Crowd Health is joincrowdhealth.com. You can use the code Lila.
Thank you. Use the code Lila.
It's $99 a month for the first 3 months. So if you're kind of like, I'm not really sure about this, but let me check it out. It's $99 for 3 months. You can stop at any time. Come and check us out.
And you don't have to discontinue your current healthcare plan.
No, you don't
have to
just give it a shot. And you can cancel anytime. So
awesome.
Come and give us a try. We'd love to do that. And then join Crowd Health on all the social media platforms.
Awesome. Andy, thanks so much for joining the podcast.
For having me.
You're awesome.
Thank you.
Say hi to Steph.
Will do.
A huge thank you to our partner, EWTN. EWTN is the world's leading Catholic network, reaching millions with the truth about the faith, entertainment, and news. Check them out at EWTN.com.